we are expected to chart the way forward and make some recommendations. Some of the colleagues were not here for the 3 days, but they can speak from their own perspectives as to what they think should be the final key messages from this conference and some recommendations for the way forward. And I'm going to start. How it's going to work is that we only have 2 questions really, which we'll have to engage with for the next couple of minutes. The first one is, what are the key messages or key learnings from this conference, especially from your constituency perspective? And each person shall have about 5 minutes to talk about what they think are the key lessons or key messages. And that will give us about 25 minutes for the first question. The next question is, what key recommendations would you make to the various stakeholders? To the government, especially the Ministry of Poverty Alleviation, or Poverty Eradication, Ministry of Labor, for instance. Ministry of Finance was mentioned, although they were not here. To the Social Security Commission, to the trade unions, to the ILO, and even to our partners such as the FDS. You don't necessarily have to have recommendation for all those. You can choose which ones you're most comfortable to talk about. But also generally in conclusion, how do you see, you working with the other organizations represented here, including government? So I think I will start with the Ministry of Labor. Ministry of Poverty Eradication. What are the key messages or key learnings for your ministry coming out of this conference?
Thank you, Fiona. You're excused because I'm also pretty new in the positions. I've held it since August this year. So everybody's meeting me for the first time, just like you. Just as a ministry, our key learnings, I must say that I want to thank, first of all, the organizers. I still have to check the name, Frederick Ebert Stockton. There are always 2 FES, so I get confused with the 2, for organizing this conference. For me, it's been a dive into that sector of the informal economy. We haven't, even now when we are busy with policy formulation for a comprehensive social protection policy for Namibia. We did put a lot of suggestions for the informal economy. Not that we don't want to, but it's merely from the understanding what are the dynamics in that sector. So it's been very, very useful. Just to give a background, that the Ministry of Poverty Eradication and Social Welfare, we've been put almost in a coordinating role, not only for poverty, but all the other social issues, which means we do coordinate the other institutions. So although my colleagues are not sitting on this podium, Ministry of Labor, Social Security, all the other issues, whatever I plenty is important, because that means then I can pick up a certain issue and say, please run with this. It cannot stay unattended. We need to put it into the policy. So the key issues that what I've been exposed to is to understand the depth of risk which people are, which are involved in the informal economy are involved, especially when you look at this morning's presentation from the union in Zambia. It was so clear, and it's not news to me. Although he said that once you get in these high positions, you forget. We don't forget, because we are not so far from it. We've been brought up by ladies, we've been brought up by domestic workers, we've been brought up by Kapana women. We know the issues. Just that we went to school and got a job, we have not forgotten. But it's good to be reminded, especially in the time when you are busy writing a policy. I think that has been a take-home issue for us. And also, we've met so many stakeholders here. I'm meeting the informal economy, people who are involved in the unions, and also seeing what their roles are. looking at the employers, what we can push for them. The Tanzanian case was specifically good to hear that, in this business of social protection right now, the Ministry of Finance is not we are not good friends because they say you are always asking for more money to give for free. But when you see that the informal economy can actually do a contributor, they can contribute, like in the case of Tanzania, you see that now with our financial space is bigger. We can make flexible ones, and so these are very, very good lessons that I'm learning from them. We don't have to just think that we are throwing money, but we are putting money together to protect our people. So that's really important. I could go on, but I think we have 2 hours, and I hope we can repeat ourselves. Or should I continue? I have several.
No, I think the first question is about really the key learnings. If you can only move into the next round.
Okay.
But if you have 2 more or 3 key lessons, I think you can go ahead. You're the ministry anyway. So.
Yeah. I think the other big thing I learned today is that it's doable. We have left the informal economy on its own for so long. But once you see that it's doable, I think that's what we always say. If you are sitting to eat an elephant, it looks like a very big task. But if you see other people have finished it, you can start with your first bite. So I can say I've become a proponent to push for the informal economy protection from this day onwards. It should come out in our policies. And I've developed passion for it because we know these people, they are our people. We live with them, we come from them. And on a daily basis, we are engaging. I think it was my friend here who said that even big government officers have kabashas. So, and we have domestic workers, so we should do just the right thing. So thank you.
I think from us, as a Namibia informal sector organization, we learn a lot. Partly is that we need to organize ourselves in a stronger organization which will represent the informal sector at all levels. Stronger organization which will represent the informal sector in the form of business owners and even at the workers level, the same organization which we partly have been doing. That was emphasis. And then the other thing which we learned also was my colleague Lamek said that, talk about action all the way. I thought that, when we were doing actions in the past, we were told in the past that the question was, no, you like fighting without talking. You like fighting before you talk. You just shoot and then you talk. But I think that is the right way of doing things. To what I have learned here, because change in this country will not come without actions. And partly also, the part of the organizations, like the informal sector organizations in Zambia, although that we don't have the same politics, one have learned that there is collaboration, stronger collaboration between the union, federation, and the informal sector organization. That was also good. I mean, it's a good lesson from our side, and which we think that we have to explore how to work with the Kavihuas and others. And maybe partly also the lesson learned is that I think this kind of activity have brought together a lot of people, but unfortunately that most of them are gone, but the lawmakers, we saw a lot of lawmakers participating in our listening, and I think maybe things will be changing because they will understand the sector. That's our key learning.
The last 3 days, you've been quite active in this conference. What are your key learnings? And what could be your immediate response to Mr. Kandenga's some of his philosophies that he raised around working together with Tukna, for instance?
Thank you very much. I just want to use this opportunity also to give a very good message to Tim Park House. It's a surprise to him. He applied for membership to Tukna as an employee of the employer organization and is approved. So Tukna now will bargain on your behalf. Yeah, thank you very much. The Zambian colleague, I will be in Livingstone to present a paper at the ZCU Congress. I am invited already. We'll meet here. We'll change more. And I hope that Mr. Gandege, Tukna have been ready for you. And we are still waiting. Let's come and play the ball together. So your membership also to Tukna, I can confirm here and prove it. The same way I did to Tim Park House. Thank you. Yeah, anyway, the lesson that we have learned, it is participation. Nothing for us without us. So when the peer is saying that we are busy developing a policy, please don't develop a policy for anyone. Facilitate the development of a policy. Therefore, if the policy is about social protections, bring to the workers, because the workers are the ones that would contribute to social protections so that they can assist where they can assist. Don't finish the document until you start becoming too defensive to the same document when saying change here, change there, change there. So we have learned the issues of participation and the proper context of consultation, not the lip close kind of consultation that's happening in this country. We have also learned that we need to decommodify social benefits. We need to decommodify social benefits, meaning that you don't need to pay a price for you to qualify for social protection. You must lose your mother for you to qualify. You must do whatsoever. You must have been in Lubango and be bitten by snakes for you to qualify for whatever these things will come to an end. Then we have also learned that, especially from a Tanzanian experience, that any program should tailor down to the natures of the targeted group. There is no one size fits all. And that's why it's very important that those are involved, or that the programs aim to, should fully participate in all those kind of things. Then we have also learned that informal sector is here to stay. So there is no way we can run away. And that would be one of the constituencies that if we develop nice social protections programs for them, poverty will be eradicated. And I don't know whether the ministry will be happy because the ministry will become irrelevant. And so people might be retrenched. I would not want that. Because if poverty is eradicated, it means what? We are doing well. That would be a credit to the ministry. So because that constituency is increasing on a daily basis, if we turn our attention to it, of course, it will be dealing with the issues of, the situations might improve of the country. Then we have also learned that what we are discussing, it is not something that we are just sleeping and dreaming about it. It is a thing that is in all many national, international, and continental programs. We have seen our colleague this morning when he was unpacking the Oh.
Yes, yeah, like that. Now
Okay.
they're regretting. So
Anyway, we're saying that the colleagues in the morning was unpacking the AU various legal interventions and programs and policies. And the issues of social protections came prominently also. The ILO, from yesterday to today, they're also talking about it. The first day, the Minister of Poverty and Eradication, Bishop Kameta, also talked about it. Harabe under social development pillar. Social development pillar, Harabe. Yeah, maybe you can remember the right way. So what we are discussing here is not in vain. It's something that is already there. We are just trying to assist. How do we facilitate the realizations of these things that are in our development program, plans. So with those few, that's what we have learned. I think the last question was on Mr. Kantenge. For Mr. Kantenge, I think that I indicated yesterday that strategic alliances are required if you want to move forward. And if he himself also indicated that, I hope that we will not have a problem at all to cooperate and move forward. Because we also lack capacity in the union. You might get something from us, you might lack whatsoever, you also get something from you. Thank you very much for this.
We're also just wondering whether the employers have been part of this process. But before I confuse you with those questions, what are the key lessons for you on social protection in Namibia in general? And what could be your response to some of the things that your colleagues, starting with the ministry, have said, including NISO and TUPNA?
And firstly, thank you to FES for organising this event. Secondly, Mr. Kavehua, I'm sorry you're too late. I signed up with NUAW last week. Okay, seriousness. I apologize that I wasn't here yesterday and this morning. I tried cloning myself several times over the last few years, but it doesn't work. So I can't be everywhere that I should be. Okay. Where to go now? Policy. I'm pleased to hear that the ministry is working on a policy. And that takes me back to an ILO meeting in Geneva several years ago when Africa Bien's governess was Commissioner for Labour at the African Union. And in front of a room full of ministers, I won't say she lost her temper, but she lost her cool. She thumped the table and she said, yes, this is the problem with Africa. We can policy, but we can't implement. And if we're having a policy, let's implement it. And if we're going to consult, as Mr. Kavehua says, consult seriously. We've seen this far too often over the last years. Ministries consult with the private sector or with the trade unions, and then they go off and do their own thing anyway. So let's have serious consultation and let everybody involved. Let everybody be involved. We could be there as well. We can help. We can help develop something here. And I believe the report from Tanzania on their voluntary scheme, I believe that's something we can follow up on. Here we can work on something, and we don't have to have a policy to do it. We can start working immediately. So those are some of the messages which I would like to get over right now. But colleagues, friends, we're 28 years late, but at the same time, we're only 28 years young. What we've done in Namibia in the last 28 years is good, but we need to build on it and build on it fast. But when we create something in the form of social security, it's not for me, it's not for any of us in this room, it's ultimately for our children and our grandchildren. You cannot build up a social security program overnight. It takes time. And that is something we are running out of for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Louis, you've been listening to the Namibians, and they are a bit emotional about a number of things. And you are, our ILO expert, and you shared much of your lessons this morning. But we do look forward to you sharing with us what would be the best possible way moving forward for Namibia from what you know about our context.
Thank you. Fortunately, I'm also very emotional, so I want to be cold-blooded. No, I think there's three key, not lessons, but highlights that I take home. There's definitely been a greater interest translated in practice on issues of informal economy across many countries in Africa. I recall a few years back going even a country like Madagascar, and I would have a meeting with the Ministry of Labor, and they would say, no, we don't know the informal sector. Here we deal with those that are covered by the labor law or the employment law. This is what we do. And I was there 2 weeks back, and they've actually now have a unit in place to deal. It must be said that the informal sector has grown so much, it's become so visible that there's no way now you can not take that so seriously. But it has been translated in practice, and I was so glad to hear cases like SSRA that maybe at the inception their priority was the formal sector, organizing the formal sector and so on, but they're really taking at heart the issues of extension and so many actions starting from the AU. I mean, it's so heartening, so good to see that at that level Africa is taking seriously this. How can it not take when we're talking about 80%, 70% of the population? It should be at the core of social policy, in fact. That's the first thing. Secondly is, we all come with our own perspective. Me, I'm a specialist in social security, so I want to see what do I have to offer. I will tell you what we can do. But that's not how it should be. We should start from the needs. And therefore, in my response, I will have to give hands to my colleague in business registration, business licensing, my colleague enterprise creation, and we come together. The response is not mine. The response is me with my colleague. I think that's the second highlight for me. We cannot do it alone as social security institutions, or it will not work. Lastly is that, actually, we hear cases, the voluntary sector, etc., etc. What is good at these things are happening in practice. But let me tell you, we don't know a lot how to do it. We still don't know a lot how to do it. But we are learning. This is the difference with even, a few years back, 10 years back. There was not this movement. There was not this movement that we see. But we are learning, and we are gaining confidence in what we are doing, actually. And I'm very happy to see this movement going, and what we want to do. We're not at the second question yet, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, leave it there.
I think you said quite a lot, that there is great awareness and greater interest to better the working conditions of informal workers. That there's even a lesson from Madagascar where they have set up an informal sector unit. What a lesson to be drawn, for our Ministry of Labor, for instance, because we cannot continue talking and only caring about the minority sector, which is the formal sector in Namibia, where the majority of 70 to 80%. And the multi-stakeholder approach, extremely important. You cannot work in silos, whether you're ministries or civil society. As a moderator, I've changed my mind, and I have every power to do that. So we are not going into recommendations immediately with the panelists. We are going to open up the floor for you who've been here for the last 3 days. Please, if you've not been here for the last 3 days, don't now get up and give us your lessons. You have to be the last. But those who have been here for the last 3 days, and we are only going to give about 5 people because, we need to get to the recommendations. What have been the one key lesson for you that you are taking home, taking back to your constituency, taking back to your ministry, your organization?
We need to do more research work so that we have more information as well. And this information is in relation to technical aspects, like what can we learn really from the ground from Tanzania? What can we learn from the ground in Zambia? And I think for the trade unions and Tateka Dengebe, I think is to look for a common ground on where you can operate from. Because otherwise, with this increasing informality, in the long run, trade unions may also be rendered irrelevant, and so they need to really work together so that they can really move forward together. Thank you.
And from the discussions that I have picked up, and also from the brother from Zambia, they seem to be doing a lot of studies and research on informal economy. Their positions are based on what they have researched on when they engage in government or other stakeholders. So I think in our case, we need to make sure that we speak from a research position documents that will be submitted. The other issue that I also learned is the word that is being used, consultation. I think we need to move away from that consultation concept and let us all be part and parcel or drivers of any policy formulation, because it does not only, well, government is the one that will be able to spearhead the process, but people who will be affected by that policy are ourselves, employers, employees, unions, and so on. So I think consultation concept should be done away with.
Actually, I want to extend what the PS and my colleague from ILO sitting in the panel actually said. I think one of the biggest lessons that I've learned here, and I expected it, is to learn from other countries that this is actually possible. So the example which he gave on the elephant. When you're alone, you think it is such a big task to do this. But when you get examples from others and see that it can be done, it makes it easier. So the biggest lesson I've learned here is that we have very good examples of what to do with the informal economy, but that information is not being shared. It's not being collected, documented, and actually shared. So instead, we have individual countries being maybe fearful, as somebody just said, of where to start, how to start it, and whether or not we can actually do it, whether we can actually even afford it. So I want to encourage all of us here, we're going to get these examples. Let's just disseminate them. Let's try and make sure everybody actually also gets the same information. And I think the more we do that, the more we will actually lessen this fear we have of dealing with the informal economy.
My name is Tony Sisule. I'm a consultant at the Ministry of Poverty Eradication and Social Welfare, helping to formulate the social protection policy. So 2 things I've learned. One is, I think, the problems of informal workers, or let me just say citizens, who we call informal workers, are very similar across Africa. I come from Kenya, and I can relate very closely to what the colleague from Zambia was saying today. Very similar issues. So it also tells me the solutions are probably set. So for example, claiming rights. Don't wait for the rights to be given to you. I mean, in Kenya, we know the local government in Nairobi is always fighting with hawkers. If they're waiting for government to give them some right, it won't happen. Maybe better advocacy, better organization, and self-help is important. The other thing I take away is from the union colleague participation. I think I note very closely that not everybody has heard what is being done with the policy in Namibia, the social protection policy. But I think I'm also very confident that it's a long consultative process that should involve everybody, and that in the end, you really want a policy that everybody knows about, everybody at least has a stake in it, and everybody, as much as possible, is going to benefit. My current thinking is that it's quite broad already. It will be covering a lot, it will involve a lot, So maybe better consultation before it's approved and implemented. Thank you.
I have two. Victor is from the Namibia Outside Retail Workers Union and affiliates to the only independent labor movement in this country, in America. I have two. One, I was very much touched by the presentation by Prof. John Strigo, where he said there was already a commitment made by the African leaders, I think 2-4 years back, as far as social protection is concerned. It's my request that the trade unions, civil organizations, pursue this commitment to be visible, not only a commitment that is collect dust in offices. Two, Agenda 2063. I think I'm supporting the person that is saying the statement that says the Africa we want, but it's on 2063. I think it's not realistic. You can't plan so many years when we do not even know what will be your economy at that very stage. Where you are unable to plan, but then for 63 years ahead, you want to plan. I think we need to revisit that. Thank you.
My take-home message is what we've talked about the last 2 days has given me a food for thought. One is, how do we continue with this discourse up to the level when we could effectively engage with governments together as partners. And I believe one of the roles we could do as partners is to ensure that we facilitate this discourse and dialogue. Here I'm talking in terms of the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung. Then there is also need for advocacy training. Are you trying to...
Don't go into recommendations, please.
Oh, okay.
But about key lessons for now.
Okay. So may I end with also ensure that we strengthen collaboration. I end there.
Consultation is important. We need the consultation. A couple of points I think we need to watch. If we're going to go to a separate fund for social protection, not use the current MSD or the Employees Compensation Act or the state grant for old age and so on, if we're going a separate direction, number one is the efficiency of administration. We cannot afford to have a scheme running where 25–30% of the money being collected is being wasted on administration. Number two, we must do it as soon as possible. I can't get away from that. But also, and I love that Zulu term, and I can never say it properly, but Tambani Gahli. You can't do it too quickly. You can start quickly, but you can't get it running quickly. You've got to take your time. Let the thing build up over time. Learn in the first few years of errors and so on, but be very careful on the cost of administration. And because we're dealing with the informal sector, we'll be dealing a lot with cash. And there's a lot of people with sticky fingers when it comes to cash. So those are a couple of areas which I think we need to watch. But I want to see this working before the end of next year. I want to see something in place. And the NEF, myself, will be involved where we need it. Thanks.
From our side, I think there is a need to extend social security, current social security protection to the informal sector. And as we have learned here, I think what must be done, maybe we have to either overhaul the whole social security system on how it can accommodate the informal sector, partly. And the other recommendation is that maybe also in social security board and other things. I think, the informal sector must be part of the various platforms. We cannot, my recommendation is we cannot just every time be represented by people who don't know us. So you say everybody here was talking about the Labor Act and Labor Code, whatever. We were not part of these things. So now there is a chance where we can be included as the informal sector. That's what we want to see in future. The other recommendation from our side is that, well, in Namibia, the informal sector, there is no policy. We're having the SME policy, which were not suitable to us. We were excluded for the first. It took us 14 years, and then they made a new micro policy, for micro businesses. And that policy again, they wrote that we are also excluded again. So now we would like to see a policy on the informal sector, because here we are talking about numbers. We say employment 60% is coming from the informal sector. So things have to change, and government have to act on that. They include us everywhere. The other part is that we must participate. Not by participation now, partly, I also want to know whether in this country do we have donors or do we have development partners? Because this country might need development partners. At that level where we have little money, we must be able to say on what we need, not on what donors need. So, but now, what I should recommend also is that, to those ILO and other groups who have the monies, that's now their time to come up and say what our needs are, but not to come in with their programs. Thank you very much.
The other one is the issue of representation. That is to the organizations that are representing informal sector. Let us be representative. Let us not be Kabihua. Just call to this meeting, come and speak what is in my mind. Let us be representative, and let also our position come from our members. So it's very important that we need to be representative. So we should always have the bottom-up approach. The other one is that we need to develop our own positions as organizations that are organizing in the informal sector. Even if tomorrow the consultant and the PS agree, consultant, go to Tumna office now, go to Mr. Kandiso office now. Can you get their opinion on this? Do we have already a position? That what kind of system we envisage? I think we might not have. So yet, we want to be participating, but we're not ready. So it goes to us, ourselves, that let us make ourselves ready to everything so that we can be relevant. Otherwise, it will be defeating process in itself. Then I concur with Tim that we need it now. No postponement. We need it now. And therefore, that's why I wanted the term of reference to know that these policies, is it going to develop for the next 5 years until the next election? Or what time frame is that we need it now? So we don't have to waste any single time. The last one is that, yes, I know that there is a fight between the Minister of Finance and others. And sometimes this fight is not yours. Just move away. Let's say there's a Minister of Finance will face us. We'll teach him a lesson and educate him. Basically, sometimes it's a ministry of poverty, I want money, then you keep yourself there. Come to us. We are going to pay his office and we this and that, but you are busy with. It's not the way to go. Because the money that you are giving out to these people, where it is goes. In fact, I can ask you now, who are the people that buys in Namibia most? Do you want to tell me the permanent secretary and ministers? No. They fly to China and they buy their money is spent in South Africa, China, and wherever. We the poor are the one who buys here. Could you see now? So who caused the money to circulate in the economy? It is informal sector. So when you give the money to them, in fact, you are just increasing the consumption base. And so the economy becomes strong. So this notion that you give money for free, whose money in fact? The money coming from where? From our national resources, from our tax. And you are giving to who? To the owner. And then you are crying. So we need to debate these things. And I know that, yes, of course, we are coming from different economic school of thought. But the bottom line, we should think socially if we want to achieve economically. I'm sure the capitalists in the house will hate me, but that's what I stand for. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. There's a chronic skill shortage in this country, and Mr. Parkhouse normally says that. But I think we realize that we have a lot of comedy, especially in this house, through our TU leader here. And I think we should do comedy night, because you make everybody laugh every time you speak. So please hand over the mic to Louis, and then we'll end with the ministry.
Yes, I want to use the three recommendations by team. First is efficiency, second urgency, and third is learn and run with calm. If I can sum up. First, efficiency. Do not complicate. And be careful with efficiency. You may not want a scheme where it costs more to try to raise revenue than the revenue that you collect, for example. And we often see that when it comes to informal economy. So make simple, efficient, and for that, the presentation I made is we need the state. There's no way. And we need broad-based funds. Informal economy workers all, first, they're citizens, as someone was saying, they're citizens. So some basic provisions, some basic protections need to exist to all as citizens and to harness the efficiency of the tax system to do just that. So let's build on, for example, what Namibia's done so well, and let's say not be restricted and have a narrow vision of what the tax benefit can do. Of course, this means that some of our thinking needs to evolve to say, you know, not to have a very limited view, a narrow view of using the tax system only for, you know, there's so many things that can be done. We're talking about public spaces. Our colleague Pat Horn has something written on her shirt. It says, "Open the public spaces to all," or something like that. You know, the tax system needs to be harnessed to allow, for example, to have childcare facilities available for women who sell in the markets, so that children are not exposed to hazardous situations. Do we need to require that necessary to be borne by the sellers in the market? Maybe they can make a contribution, or maybe the state can also make a contribution. And the same for funds for the informal sector. Secondly, is that workers or citizens, but they're also workers, they demand to be treated as workers. They can organize. They can contribute. They can also be co-managers. They can manage funds together with specialists. Urgency is, yes, we need plans, we need policies, but I do agree we need action. And I'm from the ILO, we say often we need, there should be a plan to extend coverage on the vertical and horizontal dimensions of extension of social security. It is necessary to have an idea where we want to go, because social security is a very serious matter. What you build will impact over many, many years. But we should start now, and we should start by experimenting, by trying out things. And so one recommendation for us is to continue engaging, for example, with the AU as ILO, with Inspire Work type of programs. If Inspire Work can come to Namibia, that would be really nice. Doesn't have to be called Inspire Work, but that inspiration from that type of projects that try to solve practical problems as they are experienced, so that there can be learning and we can run with calm. So these are a little bit my takeaways and recommendations.
Thank you very much, Louis. Madam PS, it's now your turn to somehow respond to some of the recommendations made by the panelists, but of course, give your perspective of the ministry on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I respond to the recommendations, I would also just mention one or two. In this case, I just want to say my background actually has been a lot on community-based work. I've worked in the public sector. I've always worked in government, but my training has been in natural resources. So I've been working a lot, especially agriculture, with farmers on the ground. So I just want to caution that we cannot think that organizing, especially the informal sector, the grassroots, is a small job. It's not a walk in the park. And this is why I'm recommending that we need champions. You know, this workshop organized by FES has already demonstrated that they are championship, they are ahead of the time to push for the informal economy. And it's when we get people like that, ILOs, they are work, standing up and pushing for that. If we don't, we fail. Because in community work, it's a lot of voluntarism. You work without anything. You work only with a vision. You work only with the need to change things. And if we don't get that from Mr. Kandenge, driving down the rural areas, Tokna also getting involved, knowing that we are working with former workers who give something, but working with people who will not give something for a while until they give something. It's love for work that gets you there. So if we don't get those champions, even for people among this room, we will not be able to bite the elephant. So this is what I'm advocating for, that championship. And my office is on the table. This is the work I've been having at the bottom of my heart. I'm on the table. My office is open, Tokna. I don't do bureaucracy. Maybe because I'm young, I don't know. We'll be very clear to you when we can see or why we can see you at a particular time and you understand it. So I'm on the table, I have the heart for the community, and I'm prepared to walk the talk. So to walk the talk, I need partners. I need dedicated partners who also walk the talk with me, who are able to get their hands dirty. This is what we need from all of you. We know that as we are almost at the higher level, the lower level of organizing the community, we talked about who is the informal community. If you talk about domestic workers, of course we've made some strides towards that. You talk about petty traders, how much have we done towards them? Everybody chips in and we get it done. Government, as I said, we are working on policy. But the issue of consultation, I think he already went into detail. My previous job before I came here, I was in the Ministry of Lands. We just had the land conference where people were saying we're not consulted. And you get down to the local level and now listen to the ideas sometimes. You find that people had not organized themselves to have concrete ideas on the table. And if you are dealing with a situation like that, then the bottom up becomes irrelevant. But it's been demonstrated by our colleagues here that it also needs a lot of mobilization. If we mobilize at that level, people will now be mobilized to make it count on the table. Because if you come to the table with nothing, again, people will tell you. I mean, when he was talking yesterday, I was trying to listen that maybe he will give me a list of things right away which I should do. Because that's what I do when the person who's standing there talks to me. I want to know, what should I do for you from the policy? The government is chartered with that issue of writing the policy. Of course, all the other actions can happen, but the policy is us, so it's us who need to be told. I'm glad if I come to Tokna and find something. I'm glad if I go to the Mr. Gandenge and find something. If I go to ILO, AU, all these things have been formulated and we have a way to go. Because if we all sit in confusion, we cannot move on. So I just wanted to, that's the issue of participation, championship. If we do that, we'll be able to get this. There's so many things which have been done. Even the struggle for independence was made from that, not from money, but from people having the ideology to push it to the end. So that's what we should take forward. I think in terms of my recommendation is that we go there. And what has been put forward to us, I think I can say it sums up in my regards. We look at the efficiencies, the extension, the policy issues. Mr. Gandenge, I think ours will be the social protection. Labor is still there, we can see what goes there. So we have all those issues. We are here, a government is there for its people. So that's basically what we are there for. We are there for our people, we are there to listen, we are there to work as partners in order to finish eating the elephant. Thank you.
So, to make recommendations in some of these sessions.
This one is really targeted at him, the recommendation for him to hear it. It's a pity that the Ministry of Labour is not here. But the Social Security, Labour is here. Oh, okay, so Ministry of Labour is here. It is for their ears too, and also for Social Security. The recommendation is as follows. We have continuously heard for the past 2 days that the informal workers with informal businesses, and that is unacceptable. A large portion of these individuals, these workers, are young people. And as a representative of young people in this country, I refuse that there be informal workers, informal businesses. And I recommend that formal businesses start formalizing workers that are already working for them. Thank you very much.
Me, I'm Susan, and I coordinate the SASPEN, the Southern African Social Protection Experts Network. So my recommendation is looking at regional level engagement of different social partners. So it's really important that, like it's been mentioned, that we need to share experiences. And from sharing our experiences as countries in the SADC, because we face the same challenges. So as it has been mentioned, even the solutions are similar. So when we get to learn what other countries are doing and what strides they're making, we get encouraged. We are encouraging our other colleagues to further research and develop solutions in this regard. And then we've also, well, for me, the issue of participation and coordination has come out a lot. And this shows that there are misconceptions around participation and coordination and to what level we coordinate, to what level we have social dialogue and discourse. So this is where capacity comes in. We need to build capacity of the different social partners from the bottom up. And this is where packages such as the Transform comes in, because the Transform training, this is a package that has been designed for experts in social protection, which is all of us that are involved in this work. And Transform has got different components, and one of the most important is coordination. There are issues of governance, coordination, monitoring and evaluation, as well as looking at legal frameworks. So I think when we expose ourselves to this training, we build our capacities. Not to say that we're not experts, but we still need more. It's a journey, and that's why even with regards to the vision of 2063, we need something to encourage us. Even though there's an urgency to start now, we need to work towards a vision. And this vision is not just for us, but for our future generation. Thank you.
The issues of financing in terms of the informal sector. I know in our countries there was a small, I don't know whether it was small, medium bank, whatever you call it, SM, whatever bank, now is closed. So now those are the issues which maybe we might recommend that such banks really are of greater necessity. So there must be a bank which finance, this informal economy. So without that, maybe what we are talking is not going to be implemented. The other issue is that, as I stated this morning, the issues of World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. I know there were issues of structural adjustment programs, which led countries like Zambia and others to be so poor. So why they are not involved to make sure that they come in to help this informal economy? I think they need to have a platform whereby those institutions, they can assist countries, developing countries like Namibia, Zambia, Tanzania, so that they assist us in terms of lifting up the informal economy. So the last issue is the issue of education. So we have realized that the informal sector is family-based. So without education, that if maybe I employ my brother or sister, for him or her to have a contract, or for him or her to be organized, so it will be, it's a problem. So then we need to educate this, informal sector, that they need to know that to belong to a trade union, whether it's a family or whatever, it's not a sin, or it's not a crime. So you'll find out that as soon as someone like in the bus, if he joins a trade union, so tomorrow the job is not there. As we have learned that it's a precarious job. So really, without education, what we are talking about, this informal economy, it cannot be realized. Whatever we are discussing, without education. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have two recommendations. One, the first step I would recommend is that FES and other partners, including the Ministry of Poverty Eradication, I don't know where this policy is sitting, Minister of Labor or Minister of Poverty? Minister of Poverty. Okay. I would recommend that FES convene, I don't know what we call it, a workshop, a meeting, or whatever, of informal economic workers to look at that draft policy and make input. That meeting will also help to bring all informal workers that can be identified and unify the informal economic workers to a one group, so that when they want to speak to you, madam, they come as one entity. It will be very helpful. The second part is that from the presentation that we got yesterday, the madam who presented mentioned that there is a group that has been created. I would suggest that if you want to make this process owned by almost everyone, I think in that group you need a representation from the informal economic workers. Because when you meet all stakeholders, a small group meets to put almost everything together. And there must be someone from the informal economy to make sure that whatever you gather from all partners from their side, it is included in that document when it goes to the drafters or whatever. So I will propose that also the small group that we've created also have someone from the informal
The Minister of Poverty Eradication and Social Welfare indicating in the opening statement that the ministry is finalizing the national pension scheme, or government rather, and the medical aid scheme also. We hear also from Olga that Ministry of, Social Security Commission has already completed a study, feasibility study for an unemployment insurance scheme, and there were some recommendations made in this regard. The disappointing fact is that I have heard this now for over a year, and it's at the same place. Social Security Commission has apparently made submissions to the Minister of Labour, and over a year it's in the Minister's office. Can we make a recommendation at this conference that government speeds up the finalization of this important instrument, some of which has been decided upon 15 years ago? Can the trade unions that are sitting on the labor advisory commissions and so on inquire about why this is not moving? And civil society trade unions really need to get together and take action so that we can hold our leaders accountable. We cannot hear meeting and meeting out, it's just at the same status, there is no movement. Thank you.
Just very quickly, Victor, we didn't answer your question about that document you were asking about in the previous round of questions. I think you're referring to the Ouagadougou Declaration. That was 10 years ago. It was then raised again as Ouagadougou plus 10, and that was about 2 years ago. I think that's Mr. Dempers, I've just moved office, and in the process of moving office, I found documents which I've forgotten about. The first paper on the National Pension Fund was the year 2000. There's a second one which was produced in 2010, and it's still under discussion now. I'm trying to find out how far it's got. That is one of my concerns, and that's what I wonder why I say about a policy for the informal sector and social protection for the informal sector. We cannot afford to take nearly 20 years for that policy. The question from Mr. van der Westhuizen, who's disappeared, I'll follow up with him directly about the informal workers in the formal sector. Thank you. You can put people on a temporary contract, but in terms of the amendments to the Labour Act of 2012, the employment is deemed to exist if certain conditions are in place. So it's not to be recommended, it shouldn't be happening. I guess it does here and there, but not as often as we think.
Thank you very much. I think
just something little, partly for this conference, maybe a recommendation which I forgot is that we have to, in the near future, we are talking about the informal sector. Informal sector are operating on land, and that land is managed by local authorities. So for the next of this type of activities, one should suggest that the municipalities, the regional governments should be part of this meeting. And secondly, also, I saw this, the thing is discussing social protection. Social security role here. They were also supposed to be here and talk, and then we hear on how they see things. So those are the part of things we have.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, I think to conclude, I think issues of national pension fund and medical aid is the issues that we have been pushing, and no one talk. Likely the acting PS of the Ministry of Labour is here. Why you don't give him a mic, please, so to respond? Where is that thing? Or it's true, it's not given to the ministry, given to the ministry. Mr. Muya, with the permission of the chairperson, you don't respond to that, please. What do you say?
I don't know if you wish to respond. There is a request, but I'm not going to put him on the spot. You want to?
Yes. I just want to discuss a bit about the policy process, because it gained a lot of airtime here in terms of the social protection policy. We started the process this year. Was it when was that? In May. It started this year, May, just to form the concept. That's when Tony was recruited. The issue is that we're just putting the concept into place right now. But we do agree, and we are taking the recommendation that we already put in all the relevant stakeholders on the table. We have what we call a core team, so we can put in the people, just as Labek already suggested. Policy formulation takes long because of negotiations, Mr. Backhouse. There's always a lot of negotiations on issues. And you can imagine this one for informal economy, that everybody has interest, and that interest has to be negotiated. That's the nature of it. I know I was when we wrote the land bill, we even thought we were finished. It got to Parliament, what happened? It was thrown out. They are back to so it's all this interest. You have to understand us. You call us bureaucrats for nothing, but always when we start negotiating interests, you sit at that table and you go on and on. And even when you think you are finished, you can start again. So I still believe that you are right that we start some of the activities without the policy. Because negotiating everybody, especially from bottom up, is not a joke. Yeah, so that's the policy. So although now our intention was that we do have a working document, which we can now sit. Our intention already is that we go region by region also and sit down, but also we need to be clear who the stakeholders are in those regions, because I know from government we just arrive at regional council. So if nobody's been called by regional council, then we say we've consulted. But you need to demand for it also. You will have to demand for it. So that's the process. We will consult before it goes to cabinet and before it goes to parliament. Just in short for the policy process.
Thank you, Madam Pillsbury. You want to have final words? Anything?
Just one word on, there was at least two people mentioned, do we have donors or partners? And, maybe Johnny is left from the EU. I think he's not here, but he will recognize how difficult, even from the EU level, to have partners or donors that are concerned with the issue of informal sector action. It's difficult to get their interest. I don't know why. So there are just a few exceptions. FES, very high. Some good bilateral partners, but there are not many. I guess the countries themselves need to be the ones to carry very high this thing as a priority and to bring it to the partners. And there could be, I don't have to mention ILO, we've always been, we've always tried to support. We also have, of course, limitations, but I think it's for the country to raise it as. And just to finalize that, it is important that this priority is not simply put on paper. Again, if I go to a ministry, is there someone who is designated focal point, who is an interlocutor on these things on a standing basis? Is there a national work group that meets regularly to take into account not one particular action, but several streams of action that inevitably have to come on? Is it feasible? Can we see in an organigram that there are people dedicating time to think about these things?
I think that's an excellent way to end this panel discussion. What are we doing at national level? Do we have a working group, a national working group, meeting regularly to discuss these things and providing input into policy processes, for instance, and not just ad hoc activities or ad hoc meetings? What is our national dedication towards participatory democracy, for instance, even using social protection as an example? I think you've been an excellent panelist. I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you and listening